Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how to keep drama out of your relationship. My guest Annie's marriage was a mess. She and her husband had been separated for 7 months, and there was another woman, and the divorce papers were filed. But then she started some new practices, and slowly her husband came closer. He initiated calls and visits with her more, and eventually the other woman just went away. Annie's sweet husband not only returned, their marriage is better than ever. They're even making plans to have another baby. She's going to share what she did to get rid of that other woman and restore her marriage into the one she always dreamed she would have. And then I'll be giving out the worst relationship advice of the week award, which is from a syndicated advice columnist who suggests doing something that I tried many times, but it never, ever worked. Join me in rolling my eyes at this inept suggestion. All that is coming up, but first let's talk about how to keep drama out of your relationship. In the bad old days when my husband John and I used to fight all the time or have cold wars, there was plenty of relationship drama. It wasn't much fun, but over time, I got used to it. It felt normal. Drama on the home front was my habit. When I finally discovered the 6 intimacy skills, along with the connection framework of a community and paying forward what I was learning, my relationship got more playful and more passionate, and our house was a lot calmer. And when I wasn't saying critical, disrespectful, and controlling things to my husband, at first, I felt like I had nothing to say to him, which says a lot about how critical, disrespectful, and controlling I had been before. It really felt odd. It was like we had little to talk about compared to before. It was peaceful, but it was also strangely quiet. I was uncomfortable. I felt like something was missing. And sure, I was getting a lot more compliments and tenderness and bedroom from him, which I loved. And I was excited to have him take me out on dates without me prompting him or asking me to dance to the song that just came on in our living room. And I liked when he would seek me out and sit by me, even when I was preoccupied, just because he wanted to be near me. Those were the things I had craved from him for so long. And it was really gratifying and miraculous to finally get them back again. But here's my deep, dark secret. I kind of missed the blow-ups. I'm not proud to admit it, but it's true. I have this penchant for drama. And when it went missing, I felt the void, which kind of proves that I might be psycho ex-girlfriend material. I know. Guilty as charged. Often, a coaching client will have the same dilemma. She'll report excitedly that the relationship is going great, that her husband is being so sweet, and that they've never been more physically affectionate. But then she also tells me that she feels restless and bored, and she wonders if she maybe doesn't have much in common with him after all. Fortunately, having nothing in common is not the problem. To have a great relationship, in my experience, all you really need in common is each other. It's not like you need to have the same interests or hobbies to have a great connection. No, the real problem is much simpler to fix, and it seems to be a universal problem that just about everybody has. And that is that your dark side is driving the bus. The problem springs from having a dark side, which we all do. We all crave excitement. We all need a certain amount of drama in our lives. And that's why we rubberneck at cars and secretly hope for a glimpse of a twisted arm or a leg. It's why crime shows are always at the top of the ratings. And the more heinous, yes, CSI and Law and Order SVU, I'm looking at you, the more popular. It's why reality shows have gotten so crazy and gossip magazines sell more when a celebrity falls from grace or does something really bizarre. We humans, we're perverse by nature. At least part of us is. Part of me is hungry for drama. I like to think of it as my minimum drama requirement, MDR for short. So here's the key question to ask yourself about this if you can identify with this uneasy feeling. Where do you want to have that drama? Do you want to stay up late fighting about what exactly he meant when he said you're like your mom? Or is getting to say what you were really thinking worth enduring the thick layer of tension and hostility throughout the house? Is trying to get him to do the chores that he promised to do but still hasn't done worth crying or yelling about? For me, the answer is definitely not. Not anymore. That's what I used to do when I couldn't figure out how not to do those things. But now, 20 years later, I wouldn't trade the intimacy in my marriage for anything. But the dark side of my soul is still alive and well. And if I'm not careful, and if I haven't had any drama in a while, I'll create some. I notice same thing happens for my students. Obviously, that's not ideal for intimacy. But fortunately, fulfilling your minimum drama requirement, your MDR, it's pretty simple. Thankfully, I figured out an ingenious way to keep my marriage connected and still fulfill my drama requirement. It's so simple. Anyone can do it. Here's the key to keeping my penchant for drama out of my marriage. I get my drama somewhere other than my marriage. I typically play volleyball a few times a week, 2 or 3 or 4 or so. And when John asks me how my match was, sometimes I say, I hate volleyball. I'm never playing it again. Of course, I am lying. I plan to go back and just like I plan to play tonight, actually. But in that moment, maybe we've just lost badly, or I didn't play very well, or whatever. It's kind of fun to wallow in the agony of defeat. I have also been known, and this is so embarrassing to admit, to tell the volleyball ref that she is blind. I did this in a not so nice way, in case there is a nice way, which I don't think there is. Sorry, ref, if you're listening to this, I was just getting my drama on. And besides, that ball was out. And the good news is, as long as I play volleyball pretty regularly, my minimum drama requirement doesn't splash out into my marriage. Volleyball and other sports are not the only way to fulfill your drama requirement, of course. One client signed up for acting class, while another started doing public speaking, which was both terrifying and gratifying for her. And another started performing as a musician on street corners. Another one started to grow her business by taking some risks. In fact, those kinds of endeavors seem to go hand in hand with using the connection framework with the intimacy skills. Once the fighting is over at your house, you might also feel a void. If you pay attention to that restlessness, it doesn't mean you miss the arguments or the unpleasant outbursts of the past. It certainly doesn't mean your husband is dull or uninteresting. It means your life is tugging at you to have your next adventure. Maybe it's been calling you for a while and you just couldn't hear it over the bickering. If your husband wants to take you on a getaway weekend or is looking for ways to make your dreams come true, consider looking for dramatic stimulation somewhere besides your marriage. Consider it a part of good self-care to fulfill your minimum drama requirement. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest, Annie, says her marriage was a mess. They had been separated for 7 months. There was another woman, and the divorce papers were already filed. But then she discovered the intimacy skills and got a coach and a community of like-minded women and started some new practices. Slowly, her husband came closer. He initiated calls and visits with her more, and eventually, the other woman just went away. Annie's sweet husband not only returned, their marriage is better than ever. They're even making plans to have another baby. She's going to share what she did to get rid of that other woman and restore her marriage into the one she always dreamed she would have. Annie, welcome to the Empowered Wife. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So take us back to the bad old days. What was happening in your marriage?
Oh, goodness. Just constant fighting. I was the expert, not only in my life, but his as well. I knew what was best. Just constant criticisms, complaints, very controlling. He worked a ton. I think, using that as he doesn't want to be here. It was not a pleasant place to be. And so he was just constantly away working. And of course that, because I was dependent on him for my happiness. So when are you coming back? And, what are we doing? And just constantly, nagging at him, being his mother, as you say, you need to go to the dentist, you need to that. I look back at myself, I was like, I wouldn't want to be married to me either.
Yeah. So he responded by working a lot. That was like so it was distant in a way, right? Because he was just,
it was. He was away working. And so he would be up there for, days on end. And, when are you coming back? And he didn't want to come back. And so, I was completely dependent on him for my happiness, and, miserable when he wasn't there, and very controlling of what are you doing while you're away. And just, he didn't want to be around, and he made that known.
Yeah. So, and I just remember for myself, like it's incredibly lonely when he's avoiding you, and it's hurtful.
It's lonely. It's hurtful. We had a young daughter. Well, we still have our daughter. She was very young at the time, about 18 months. And so for me, I just became very bitter and angry that, I kept saying that I was a single mom and raising her myself, and, what you focus on increases. And, that didn't help to build intimacy when I was bitter and angry at him for always being away working. That didn't help him to want to come home, because why would he want to come home to that environment and that situation?
Yeah. And at the same time, you just probably felt like you were drowning trying to be a mom. You had nothing else, right? Like, how else were you going to get some help?
Exactly. Like, I worked full time. I was taking care of my child. And I didn't have the gratitude that he was working to take care of his family and to provide for his family. But I just saw it as, you're using this as an excuse to get away from us. You're using this as not wanting to be here. And so I never displayed that gratitude of, you're working hard to provide for our family. I was just angry and bitter and not pleasant.
And unhappy. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll relate to you, Annie, for sure. So, and then he started an affair. You found out.
Yeah. So of course he doesn't want to be home, and he's away working, and lo and behold, guess what happens? And so, there was another woman involved, and it was just ugly. And so he said, I found out about it very quickly. He was just like, nope, I'm done. I'm going to be with that woman, and I want a divorce, and we are done. And he was not coming home.
And had you already maybe considered divorce yourself, because it was so painful?
I had, because it was just such an ugly environment. Neither one of us were happy. And I think we never discussed it together, but I was just like, I can't go on like this. I wasn't happy. He wasn't happy. And we just kind of, we drifted apart, and, he drifted to someone else. So it was not pleasant.
But it's just the most heartbreaking discovery still, even if you're thinking, maybe I don't want this one. I think the moment you find out he's got somebody else is just a knife in your heart.
It is. It's painful. As much as you might not be happy with the current situation, it's like, you don't want to find out that there's someone else. And I don't know if that's part of like the controlling. Like, I want to be in charge of what's going to happen. I'm the keeper of the relationship. So having him just decide he was walking away was not good.
Yeah. So, you really went through some hard knocks in this relationship. So, then so what happened? You guys decided
filed for divorce. He moved up to where he had been working. He moved up there full time. He would come visit our daughter maybe once a week for a couple hours. But I mean, he'd walk in the door and greet her with hugs and kisses. And it was like, I didn't even exist. Couldn't even look at me. And then again, so I'm already angry and bitter that I'm taking care of our daughter by myself. Now I'm even more angrier and more bitter that there's another woman involved. So, he would come to visit and it would just be constant arguments and constant fights because I was, how could you be doing this to me? And so it was not good. And so divorce papers were filed. We had our first meeting at the court. And Laura, I remember him standing on the court steps. He asked if we can go together. And I was like, are you nuts? And so we were standing outside the court and he looked at me and he said, it's not over yet. And he was crying. And I thought to myself, I can turn this around. There is still I didn't know the skills then, but now I look back and I say his heart message was, he doesn't want this. We can't go on the way we were, but he doesn't want to leave. And so there's something that needs to be done.
Wow. So that spoke directly to your heart. And brought you. Yeah.
I got home and got on the internet. It was like, what can I find? What program? And I actually came across you and The Surrendered Wife. And I read the book first. And I think like every woman that you talk to says, it's like you were a fly on the wall in my marriage and you wrote this for me. And so luckily for me, I think I'm the only person who benefited from COVID, but the divorce got put on hold because COVID happened and the courts shut down. So I was like, okay, well, this buys me time. And so it got put on hold. That was in March, got put on hold until June. And then in June, he agreed to put on hold another 3 months. So we didn't have any decision points to make in the divorce until September. So it really gave me time. It was in June that I hired the coach. I got myself a coach with you and just dove into the skills. I was like, I have this opportunity to turn things around.
Yeah.
And so just my big focus was self-care, just making myself happy and doing what makes me happy. And, we're in quarantine, we're locked down. I took up oil painting. I totally lost myself. I became a wife and a mother. And I was like, I don't even know who Annie is anymore. And so I used to take oil painting classes. I ordered all my stuff online, started doing YouTube videos to teach myself oil painting again, and going to the botanic gardens and, teaching myself photography and just anything that would just give me something to do and to make me happy and to not focus on what he was doing and to completely just get off his paper and not think about all of that.
So you were sort of letting your artist out, it sounds like, with the photography and the painting. And so how would that impact your relationship, or did it impact it?
I wouldn't say, I don't know if it necessarily impacted it directly, but it's just, I was more pleasant to be around. I had things to talk about when he came to visit that weren't about our daughter. Like, he got to know Annie again, just as I got to know her again. And so it got me off his paper, stopped being angry and bitter about, raising our daughter or the other woman. I also took to just enjoying. I used to always say, I wish I had maternity leave when my daughter was older to enjoy her. And I feel like I got that during COVID. Just really had a wonderful summer with her, spending time with her. And so, but I also dug into other skills. So, I hear you duct tape when he would come to visit. I remember my coach saying, he would tell me things. And I was like, why is he telling me this? I don't want to hear that. And my coach would just say, just be grateful he's sharing. He feels comfortable to share. And then cleaning up my side of the street. So it took a lot in me. I apologize for being disrespectful when I did X, Y, and Z. For some of them, he'd be like, that wasn't, you don't need to apologize. That wasn't disrespectful. But other times he'd be like, apology accepted. And I was like, oh, that was big. I needed that one. And there were times my coach was like, did you apologize for being disrespectful when I found out about the other woman. I made him leave immediately. I didn't want him in the home. She's like, did you apologize for being disrespectful? And I was like, well, that wasn't disrespectful. Like, I did the right thing. She said, it doesn't matter what you think. He might need that to clean up your side of the street. And so I apologized. It took everything in me to apologize for being disrespectful. He said to me, apology accepted.
Oh, wow. So you didn't really feel that it was disrespectful, it sounds like. Or you felt like you were justified, maybe.
I felt justified in doing it.
Yeah. So what had you apologize for something that you felt justified in doing then?
I would say just I apologized for being controlling. I apologized for criticizing him. I apologized for I don't remember how I phrased it, but for not understanding that he was working hard for our family, and apologizing for being angry about that. And so those were really big for him. Having the gratitude that you're a wonderful provider, using the spouse fulfilling prophecies. Thank you for being such a wonderful provider for our family.
Wow. Those must have been hard words to get out of your mouth the first time. I apologize for being disrespectful.
It was, especially when you're coming from being, this controlling person who feels justified, and then to admit, okay, that really isn't the way I want to show up. And so, but these are skills. This becomes a way of life. This isn't just get your husband back. This becomes a new way of living. And I've used them on everybody. I use them on my employees. I use them on my parents, my mother-in-law. Like, I hear you goes a very long way with everybody.
It does. That's good. So you're just skills girl everywhere you go.
It's
not just a marital practice. And so he was receiving these apologies, and you're practicing self-care. And I hear some gratitude too about him being a good provider. What else did you do? Because this is quite, your marriage was really in a crisis, right? The papers are filed, the separation, the other woman. How did you get rid of that other woman?
I didn't focus on her. She just wasn't, that was his paper. That was her paper. That wasn't something, I wasn't going to complain about her and say, make her go away. I just really focused on myself and became the best version of me, because that's all I can control, right? I can't make him get rid of her, but I can become the best person. And I knew, regardless of what happened, like, I want to do this for me. I want to be the best version of me. And so regardless of if he came home or not, I am doing what makes me happy. I'm doing what I'm having the dignity. I didn't give that other woman any thought. And I knew, we have a child together. He's going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life, regardless if we're married or not. And so I really worked on cleaning up my side of the street. And I remember it was in September, it was actually our anniversary, that we had to make a decision about if we wanted to go forward with the divorce or not. So, like, horrible way to spend your anniversary. And I remember he kept saying, like, what do you think? What do you want to do? And I pulled out the skills. I said, I believe in us. I would like to stay married. And he said to me, I said, what do you think? And he said, I haven't changed my mind. Still want to go ahead with the divorce. And Laura, I think it took everything in me to sit there with a straight face and not react. And I said, I respect your decision. And literally, I would say it was probably like 3 weeks later, he's totally flipped. And it went from if we stay married to if we continue with the divorce. And then everything just started happening so much sooner. Thanksgiving was the year from when I found out about the other woman, and he left. And he came in on Thanksgiving and he said to me, I miss you. He started mirroring the skills back to me.
Had you said that to him?
I said it to him once. It wasn't something that I felt comfortable saying to him many times. Like, that's kind of like a one and done. But But I remember on Thanksgiving, he came in because it was a very emotional day for me, like the year. And he just said, I miss you. I'm sad. I'm lonely. And he kissed me for the first time in a year. And so it was just like, respect is like oxygen to them. And so that, I'd say if there's any skill, self-care and respect, the two main ones that really helped turn everything around.
It's so impressive, Annie, that for him to say, I haven't changed my mind, right? So you're getting crushed right there, right? That's your heart getting trampled on big time. And your response was, I respect your decision. How did you come up with that in that moment, when it's such a painful moment?
I realized that begging, pleading, not going to get me anywhere. And like I said, like we are going to have this relationship for the rest of our lives. And I don't know, maybe it's my coach, little angel on my shoulder, or hearing you in my head. But I said, I respect your decision. And I will say, like, I did call my coach immediately after he left and bawled to her and lost it on her. But to him, I respect your decision. And he needed to know that, like, they need to be heard. He wanted to be heard and felt like he had an opinion. He was allowed to feel the way he wanted. And I wasn't being controlling. And I think that was the biggest thing, is that he saw I wasn't trying to control it, of, you have to come back or you have to do this. It was just, okay, I respect you. The hardest words that have ever come out of my mouth.
Yes. But it made me want to cheer like you made a touchdown at a football game, because it's quite impressive, right? To have that much dignity and self-control in a hard moment like that.
Mm-hmm. And I immediately, as soon as he left, I dug it. I'm like, I'm going to take a bubble bath, like whatever self-care I have to do. Forget about 3. I need about 30 today. Yeah. But that was did as much self-care as I could that day.
Right. And even crying to your coach, I love that part too, because your feelings still needed their day in the sun, right? You still needed, yeah.
And that's what I love about, like, having the coach and then also having the community. So you can post on Facebook. I love that you start with your wins, start with the positive, which focus on increases. And, but there's a community of like-minded women. I didn't talk to any friends or family about anything that I was doing, just because, everybody has an opinion. Everyone's the expert in your life, and especially when your marriage is in crisis. And so it was just, you have this safe community of everybody has the same goal in mind of, ending divorce and saving your marriage. And so it's just I was really fortunate to have that group.
So you could go in there on that day and say, my husband still wants to go through with the divorce, and you're feeling all crushed. And I don't know, how did the community respond or I don't know if you went and posted that day?
Yeah, no, I did, because it was very upsetting and emotional, and everybody, I hear you, hugs and sending love, but faith over fear. And there is, you have your friends who aren't in, the diamond program and know the skills, and, divorce is the best thing, but you go into this community and everyone's like, keep having faith over fear. And so that really just kept me. There were a couple of ladies that I really had developed relationships with, and I would private message with them. And so it's such a supportive group. And I couldn't have done it without having the coach in that group.
Yeah. And then when 3 weeks later, your husband turned around and it was all about staying married. It
was. And it started, it was like, let's get lunch. And, we went on a dinner date, and, he started saying that, like, we're dating. And he just completely, and it took time. I'd say it was Christmas. I will tell you, Christmas, he came over week before Christmas, and, he was like, I want to take you. He hadn't, in the bad old days, I don't think I got a Christmas present for years. He just didn't have time, couldn't be bothered. So he said, I want to take you to this little shop around the corner. And, I was there with a friend, the other day, and I saw this sweater that, I want to get it for you, but I'm not sure your size. So let's go and get your Christmas present together. And I said to him, I said, well, what would you like for Christmas? I'm going to start crying now when I tell you that. And he said, I want to come home.
I'm going to start crying too.
So, but it took about another 6 months to get, it was slow. And I have to tell you, that was like one of the hardest, relinquishing control. Like, you said, you want to come home already. I was letting him do things on his timeline and just letting him, he started staying over. So he'd stay on the couch. I'm like, okay, just gratitude. I'm grateful he's here. I'm grateful he's staying. I remember one night he came by and I said, you're welcome to stay over. And he said, I'm not ready yet. I said, okay, I respect that. Like an hour later, he called me and he said, can I come stay? So he spent like maybe a month sleeping on the couch and then, came back up to the bedroom, and it was just letting him set the timeline and let him do things on what felt best for him. As much as I was like, get home already. So yeah, but he's been home for like about 2 months, like full time, like in the house, and just everything is fabulous. And it's really, he was the one that said, I want to call the lawyers and dismiss the papers. Like, it was his idea. I never mentioned it.
Wow.
It's really relinquishing control and letting him not feel pressured. He said, I want to stop the whole process.
Music to your ears, I bet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's done your little happy dance.
Absolutely.
And so what is your marriage like now?
It's amazing. Like, he is so kind and sweet and loving. Like, he'll just, if he's he travels for work still. He's in a different job, but he'll send me a song. He'll text me a song. He's like, this came on the radio when I cried thinking about you, and some like cheesy love song. Like, my husband never did that before.
Same guy.
It's just he wants to do things around the house. I don't nag at him to do it. He's just like, all of a sudden, Saturday morning, he's like, I'm going to go like organize the garage. Like, great. It's really fabulous. And I think we have date night, at least 2 or 3 times a week. We get babysitters, or we have the grandparents watch our daughter, and just, that never happened before. He wants to spend time with me. He wants to be home with his family. And it's really amazing.
This is the same guy that used to be at work all the time. Didn't have time.
He's married to his work. Yeah.
He's married to his work. So he's not married to his work anymore.
No, he's married to me, and he loves it. He tells me all the time how much he loves me, that I'm the love of his life, and how beautiful I am. And, physical intimacy is better than ever. And
so, Annie, how has this, this was quite a thing you went through, but how has it impacted you as a person? Like, how are you different now than you used to be?
And this is going to sound crazy, but I wouldn't have changed this past 18 months for anything. And I think you said it in your book, or it was the worst time of my life and the best time of my life. And I think you really you can play victim and say, poor me, this is awful. Why is this happening to me? Or you can say, okay, this is happening. How do I become the best version of myself? How do I make the best out of this? And I honestly, I wouldn't change it for anything. I learned these skills. Like I say, I use the skills on everybody in my life. It made me a better daughter. It made me a better mother, a better employer, a better friend. Sometimes people want to vent to you and want to, get frustrated, and just, I hear you. Even my husband will have something happen at work and he just wants to vent. And before I always had a solution. I knew what was best to do in that situation. Now it's just, I hear you. They just want to be heard. Just like sometimes I want to be heard. Or even with my daughter, she's 4 and she'll go screaming. I'm like, okay. She just wants to be heard. But yeah, it's just, even if something happens, I'm trying to think, something happened the other day that is just, and I said, that's not how I want to show up in our marriage. And so, like I said, it's not it's not get them home and then the skills go out the window. Like this is a way of life.
It sounds like you feel good. Makes you feel good too.
It does make me feel good. And even now, like if I'm starting to feel like cranky or I start to get on his paper of what is he doing, like I need self-care. Like, I recognize now when I'm like agitated and moody, it's like I need to go focus on me. I need to go do something that makes me happy, because it is very easy to get caught up in being a wife and a mother and working full time, and life happens. And it's like, wait a minute, I need to take a step back and do the self-care so I can show up as the best version of me and really take care of my family better.
It sounds very dignified. And you also sound more confident to me.
I am more confident. And I will tell you, I have people, my husband tells me, my friends tell me, they're like, your voice is different than it was 18 months ago. Like you just have this confidence and just this calm, and little things don't bother me because it's let it go. And I really love what you say is what you focus on increases, and just really focus on the gratitude instead of finding what's wrong or, he didn't do this or he didn't do that. It's like find the positive and find the good that he's doing, and that will grow. And I really believe that.
You're living proof of it for sure, Annie. So how has this impacted your daughter? She's 4, you said?
She's 4. Yeah. It's been great. I mean, she was like 18 months or 20 months when when all of this started. And so like she was so young, she never even knew what it was like to have daddy live in the house. And so now she's just so happy. She loves having him home, and she feeds off of me. She feels my energy. So when I'm angry and bitter, it's like, she's being miserable today. I'm like, no, she's picking up on my energy. And so now there's just this calm in the house, just from me, from my husband and I not fighting. Like everybody is just happy and getting along. And that really impacts everybody in the household.
Wow. Yeah, she's got such a great home court advantage from really happy mama and connected mommy and daddy too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what a great gift to her this journey has been too. Sounds like
it has. It's a journey for everybody in the whole family, and it's just really fabulous. And everyone says to us, like, you guys are so different now, and like our parents can see like how happy and in love we are, and it's just the whole dynamic and the whole energy has changed. And it's really amazing. We're trying for a second baby, and I'll tell you, so funny. Before all of this happened, I was, miscontrolling of like, our daughter is almost 2. Like everybody's having a second baby. We need to have the second baby because this is on my timeline and I'm in charge. And he was like, no.
Attractive.
Like who wouldn't want to have a baby with that, right?
Yeah.
And so like this, I'd say like in March of this year, so after, like as he was coming closer and, we were talking about him coming home, and he was like, I want another baby. He was all about it. It was him that brought up like, we're having that second baby. And so I actually, because I had started a new job, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And he was like, no, but like, we're going to do this. So the roles totally reversed, in that I never mentioned it to him. And so as soon as I just let go of that and stopped complaining about it, it's like, yeah, I really think we need a second baby. So
you could not have seen that coming.
No, never.
Surprise. Yeah. Like a year from now, everything's going to be opposite world of what you're experiencing, right?
But I will say, you did a podcast probably about a year now, and it said, where do you see your future self? And I remember I said to my coach, she said, you have to listen to this podcast. And I told my coach, I said, next summer, my husband's going to be home. I'm going to be pregnant. And she's like, okay. And I said, my husband's home. I'm not pregnant yet, but my husband's home. And I'm like, I always felt that I just saw my future self and always had the faith over fear and always just knew he was going to come home if I did these skills. And it's just amazing. I look at where it was last summer compared to this summer, and it amazes me. I've lived through this whole thing and I'm still amazed about where we are right now.
Because it's a miracle. This is a miracle. You're living a miracle. And yet I give you all the credit for creating this miracle and saving your family.
Yeah, well, I give a lot of credit to you.
Glad we found each other.
I'm very glad we found each other.
So there's a woman, someone's listening who's where you were, separated, divorce is filed, another woman, and she wants to know your best tip for having it be like it is now, where her husband is home and wants to have a baby with her and says, "You're the love of my life." What should she do? What's your best tip for her?
I would say stay on your own paper. Focus on yourself. Focus on being the best version of you, because regardless of what happens, these skills will benefit you. And just doing your self-care. Don't worry about what he's doing or what he's not doing. It's so easy to fall into that trap. And just, he's not doing this, or why isn't he doing that? Just, again, I've said it multiple times, what you focus on increases, and just focus on, your self-care and being happy and being grateful. We have so much to be grateful for in our lives, and that we focus on this one thing. Like, I need my husband to be home. Like, I have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful daughter. I have a fabulous job. I had, a roof over my head. We got through COVID. Like, there's so much in life to be grateful for. So really focus on that, and just clean up your side of the street. Take every opportunity that you see him, and make it a date. I think you had the 14 tips on one of your blogs that you did, but make everything a date, and just be the goddess of fun and light. Nobody wants to be with Debbie Downer. They want the goddess, and the smile campaign. And sometimes it's really painful because the smile is the last thing you want to do, but really just focus on making yourself happy, because you're going to have that for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens with him. But if you do that, I guarantee you, like, things will turn around with him.
Yeah, absolutely. They sure did for you. And, we see it here a lot, but your story is just so impressive, because it is painful to smile when you're feeling so hurt and maybe hopeless and scared. But you found your way to doing that. What would you say to Annie from before? If you could go back in time and talk to her, knowing what you know now, what would you say to her?
Goodness. Relax. Just enjoy life. Stop trying to control everything. Stop trying to be the expert in everyone else's life. Like, just really focus on, I am the only one that can make myself happy. And I never knew that. I'm so dependent on him to make me happy. And that's a tall order to put on him, and just really doing what makes me happy and not losing myself and becoming a wife and mother. And like I said, it's still something I work on today. I'm not losing myself again.
Absolutely. Well, you have a beautiful, amazing, inspiring story, Annie. I'm so glad we got to hear it. Thank you for your generosity and sharing so vulnerably, so authentically. You're a rock star.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I want to do my piece to help contribute to ending world divorce. So.
Yeah, you did. This is a big contribution to ending world divorce. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that I find most futile this week was sent to me by one of my coach trainees. And this is such a great contribution to the podcast. So here is your shout out with my big thanks. You are so thoughtful to provide this and support the podcast this way. This rotten advice was written by a syndicated columnist published in at least one major newspaper, and it's so full of terrible advice, it's hard to know where to start. I guess we'll start at the beginning, even though it only goes downhill from there. She says that if your husband is hostile, the answer is to, number one, say, that is not okay, calmly in the moment. And then number two, say, I won't stand for this if the hostility persists. And number three is a therapist and then an attorney if you don't see sufficient change. Okay. So just that brief snippet of this column is riddled so thoroughly with failed ideas. But we have to start somewhere. So let's start with the idea that when your husband loses his temper or is hostile, you would say, that's not okay. Sounds a lot like what some might consider a boundary, right? But the translation of that's not okay is actually, you're not okay. The subtext is, you're wrong and bad, truly. And what kind of a response can you expect to get from someone when you tell them you're not okay and that you're wrong and bad? That they'll calm down, start being more thoughtful and apologetic because you told them they weren't okay? Seems unlikely, right? I mean, you could certainly trigger some more hostility that way, in my experience, especially if you're coming from a place of imagining that the whole conversation may end with a divorce attorney. That's going to shine through. So already this advice is making my eyes roll right out of my head while I sigh dramatically. So giving this the Worst Advice of the Week award feels like an understatement already. This advice could be competitive for Worst Relationship Advice of the Year. It could go on to get a gold medal in the Worst Advice Olympics. But there's more. Even if this suggestion wasn't the equivalent of pouring gasoline on the fire already, let's just pause for a moment to ask this vital question. If someone took this advice and said, you're not okay to her husband, that's not okay, you're not okay, well, whose paper would she be on? Whose paper is that on to say, you're not okay? If you answered his paper, then ding, 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 give yourself 10 podcast listener points because you nailed that one. So saying you're not okay is not even on her own paper where all her power is. So taking this terrible advice means no one will be tending to her paper at the moment because she can't be both places at once. When you're on someone else's paper, you've abandoned your own paper. No one's there to ask you how you feel, to ask you what you want, much less answer that question and tend to your needs accordingly. And I know that the times I have abandoned myself like that because I thought I could control my husband were painful and scary and exhausting, and that never brought out my best. These days, I prefer to stay with myself if I notice irritation or fear or hurt rising in me. I consider tending to that feeling my highest priority, far above trying to control the behavior of a grown man. Because by staying with myself, I can ensure that I'm always safe. I'm always going to be there to acknowledge my inner life, to soothe myself, to take care of me the way a good mother takes care of her child. I might realize I want to break from the conversation, and I might say so. Or I might notice I feel hurt. I might say, ouch, to acknowledge that for myself. Or I may feel guilty that I too said something unpleasant, and I may decide to give myself the gift of a clean side of the street and restored dignity with an apology. By honoring myself, I feel safe in just about any conversation, and the temptation to control someone else vanishes. There's no need to try to make him change his behavior now or in the future because I'm taken care of. That feeling of safety has given me what feels like superpowers to be able to be compassionate or empathetic even, or accountable, or whatever I need in that moment if I've made the interaction messy to begin with. And those are the qualities that truly create the transformation I was seeking in my own marriage, where my husband is so tender and gentle, or else apologetic when he isn't. He never means to hurt me. It's never intentional. And that seems so obvious to me now that I'm in the habit of staying on my own paper and avoiding criticizing him, even if he seems like he deserves it. So for that reason, this advice that if your husband is hostile, the answer is to, number one, say, that is not okay, calmly and in the moment. And then number two, say, I won't stand for this if the hostility persists. And number three, is a therapist and then an attorney if you don't see sufficient change. It's the very, very worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week's podcast is top secret. I'm fixing my marriage. Don't tell my husband. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I absolutely follow the safety guidelines from the Center for Disease Control, except for the part where they say, don't eat raw cookie dough.